The story for the day comes from the Reddit user Little Hero Nate. The Tall Man. I'm writing this in hope somebody might be able to help before it's too late. It all started about a month ago when I was walking home from the bar I work at. It was late by then, and the small town I live in looked like a ghost town. It was honestly pretty creepy, and I quickened my step, thankful my house was only a few blocks away. I took out my phone and checked the time, 12:32 a.m., and that was when I saw him. I was in the process of putting my phone back in my pocket when I happened to glance across the street and noticed the man standing stock still under a streetlight. He looked to be around 6, maybe 7 feet tall, but it was hard to tell because he wore a very dirty, very old trench coat. For some reason, the sight of him standing there got to me, and I sped walked for the rest of the way home, constantly checking over my shoulder just in case he chose to follow me. I breathed a sigh of relief as I turned onto the pavement leading up to my door and made my way inside, almost unconsciously locking the door behind me. I quickly shook off the creepy feeling from before and plopped down on the couch to eat dinner and relax before bed. The rest of the evening went by fast. I watched a few programs on the TV and decided it was probably time to head upstairs to get some sleep. I made my way up the stairs and to my room by the end of the hall, making sure to turn off all the lights on the way there. Growing up, my dad had always screamed at me for leaving the lights on, saying I would cost him millions. And I guess the rules stuck with me to my adult years. I got to my room and shut the door behind me and began my nighttime routine to get ready for bed. After all that was finished, I slipped down between the covers and closed my eyes, ready for the morning. All of a sudden, I jerked awake and checked the time, 5 a.m. Way too early to be up, but my body had needs. I quickly used the bathroom and drank some water and headed back to bed, repeating the chore of turning off all the lights. As I crossed my room, I heard a very loud noise outside and jumped. I ran to my window and looked outside, trying to see the source of the disturbance. I held my breath anxiously as I heard more sounds approaching from down the street, getting closer by the moment. I let out a sigh of relief after a couple of drunken teenagers appeared from around the corner of the street and down the sidewalk, singing loud rap songs and swaying back and forth, more than likely on their way home from a party. They passed my house and continued on, still singing, until they disappeared, engulfed by the early morning fog. I turned to go back to bed and froze in my tracks, my eyes fixed to the street below. There, standing maybe 5 houses away, was the same man before, barely visible, despite the street lamp he stood under. Was he following me home? The thought escaped my lips, and I startled at the sound of my own voice. Looking away for a few seconds to compose myself, I glanced at the street again, and he wasn't there anymore. He had vanished. I look every direction, but I cannot see him. So I gave up and returned to bed, giving in to sleep. Things after that were pretty normal. I went to work, came home, slept, and did the whole thing over and over again. I hadn't seen the man since that night and pretty much forgotten about him until a few weeks ago, when I decided to have my friend Stacy stay the night. She was a nice girl I had met at work, and we became fast friends, bonding over our love for horror movies. A horror movie, in fact, was the reason she was coming over that night. Some new slasher I've never heard of recently came out, and she wanted to watch it with me, so we sort of planned a sleepover, complete with snacks. I had just finished setting out various chips and popcorn I had when the doorbell rung, and I went to open the door. There stood Stacy, a slightly troubled look on her face, and I invited her inside, asking what's the matter. She set down her coat and turned to me. "Did you see the man who was behind me on the sidewalk?" Her words made my blood run cold, and I quickly walked over to the door and peered through the peephole. Once I was satisfied no one stood there, I turned back and we both headed to the living room, trying to lighten the mood by talking about the new movie. We sat down and she put it on, and I quickly forgot about the events of earlier and became engrossed in the movie. It was actually pretty good. We watched the movie, talked, and ate snacks till the credits came on and it was time for bed. The couch pulled out into a small mattress, so that's where she slept, and I headed to my room. Once again, turning every light off on the way. I stopped for a moment beside my bedroom window but saw nothing outside, and got into my bed, quickly succumbing to sleep. Maybe about an hour later, I woke up to a slam downstairs and ran down to see the front door hanging open, and Stacy slowly walking across the porch and down the steps. "Hey, Stacy, what's going on?" I called, but no answer, as if she was in a trance. I went to go grab her and get her back in the house, but stopped dead in my tracks as I looked at who, or should I say what, she was walking towards. It was the man, except this time he looked impossibly tall. He wasn't wearing his trench coat. Instead, where the coat should have been, was a long cut in the man's chest and stomach, and through the gash was unfolding hundreds of arms, long and ghostly white, which reached to grab Stacy. I couldn't move as I watched her get snatched up and seemingly put her into the man's torso, her body crunching and cracking as the arms stuffed her corpse inside. After that, he smiled at me and put his trench coat back on, raising a finger in a shushing motion, and walked away down the street. Finally, my legs started working again. I collapsed onto the carpet, trying to make sense of what I had seen. That thing had just shoved my coworker into his damn body. What if it would come back for me, unsatisfied with the meal tonight? I slammed the door and shakily made my way to the bathroom. After emptying the contents of my stomach, I wiped my mouth and sat down on the toilet, still in shock from what just happened. I went to my room and looked down upon the street again, looking for any sign I wasn't losing my mind, but no sign showed itself. I gave up and went to bed, or at least I tried to. I wake up the next morning with a massive headache and called in work sick. I popped a couple of Advil and sat down on the couch rubbing my temples. All of a sudden I heard a knock on the door and jumped slightly, the events of last night still playing in my mind. I hesitantly make my way to the front door and look outside but saw nothing. I opened the door and looked down to see a piece of paper laying on my welcome mat. I picked it up and turned it over to see the two words that sealed my fate. "You're next." I haven't been to work in 2 weeks and I refused to leave the house. Even when my friends kept calling me to hang out, I know if I go outside he will get me. There was one night recently I woke up to find myself downstairs with my hand on the front door, ready to open it. I immediately pulled away and ran back upstairs. Since then, I locked my bedroom door. I know he's coming from me, and I don't know how long I have till he gets me. Please, if anyone can help me, please, I don't want to die. The end. This has been Gray Stories. I hope you liked them. Good night.